How can someone be critical of a game they've never played? If you asked me about which film I'd rather watch and gave me a choice between a film about a New York police officer trapped in a Los Angeles skyscraper battling terrorists and foiling a multi-million-dollar robbery, all while needing to save a group of hostages and at the same time repairing the relationship between himself and his estranged wife, or the tale of a circus dog who escapes his cruel ringmaster and brings joy to a sad young boy by joining the high school basketball team, I'd have to think about it for a second. As a 45-year-old male, I'd need to really dive into what demographic each film was targeting. I'd also need to consider what other films in the genre I might have already seen and whether or not I enjoyed any of them to really make an informed choice. Maybe if I could see a trailer of the two movies, I could have a better sense of which would appeal to me. With even just a few small threads of information, I might be able to get a sense of which film would bring me more joy and, most importantly, why. Have I watched movie trailers in the past, been overwhelmed with excitement only to be frustrated by the final product? Absolutely. Have I known little to nothing about a film going in and left pleasantly surprised? You betcha. Sometimes instincts are wrong, but sometimes you get exactly what you expect. With that being said, everything that we have seen and heard so far about the upcoming Civilization has this Husky getting very emotional. But I wanted to look at some of the game's confirmed major changes and whether or not they have me getting emotional in the happy, positive, there's a good boy sort of way, or emotional in the sad, dreary, bad dog sort of way. Welcome to Civilization Stories, where we explore alternatives to history through the lens of the world's most addictive video game. First, let me just state that I am thrilled that I will be playing a brand new major Civilization series game beginning next month. Crazy, it's so close. Please remember that just because I am critical, it does not mean that I am cynical or will not love playing the game. Whether or not I love the game will depend on if it's fun to play and keeps me clicking next turn, next turn, next turn, wait, just one more turn. Let a video like this also serve as a reminder as to what we may have thought before against what we will think after we actually play the game. And as much as I just said this is obviously a video about how I feel today about what we know about the major changes to the upcoming game. First, no builders. This is an area that actually has me quite excited. As much as I love builders and they have been such a staple of the Civ series, I'm intrigued about where the series is headed in this regard and what it could do to free up strategy for minigames and other areas of play. In Civ 7, instead of using builders to transform the environment to collect resources, settlement growth events will be used to expand the territory controlled by towns and cities and how the resources within them are added to one's empire. Although it sounds like a loss or a dumbing down of some of the tried and tested core mechanics, I'm excited to see how this shapes out. So that is one, there's a good boy. Second, cities versus towns. Unlike in every other Civ game where every settlement founded by a settler operates and contributes to the empire in the same way, in Civ 7 every new settlement starts as a town that provides gold and other resources to the capital until it grows into a city capable of producing buildings and units like the founding city. Future settlements can then service these cities as your empire grows. I have reservations about how this will play out, but I do appreciate how new settlements founded by players to widen the borders of their empire can contribute in a softer and more meaningful way than suffering through the 67 turns to build a simple monument that happens with young cities in Civ 6. There's a certain realism to it whereby settlements are found in areas just because you need a resource like iron. As time progresses, well, then maybe a school is necessary. So, okay, I'm excited. Good boy. Third, urban and rural districts. For Civ 7, developers have done away with the themed districts and simplified them into urban or rural. Rural districts provide resources like food and luxury or strategic resources, whereas urban districts can house buildings that provide yields like science and culture. No longer is a district themed with restrictions where a library can only be built within a campus. Now, buildings of various district types can be paired together to offer different adjacencies and that can synergize in unique ways depending on a player's playstyle or goals. This appears to be a city building mechanic, and it has me really excited. This, coupled with the concept of overbuilding to make unique quarters that persist into later eras, seems like a really fun mini-game centered around making cities more beautiful and unique. I imagine players will be showing off the beauty and synergy of some of the more outstanding cities they build. As far as storytelling is concerned, thanks to this mechanic, I can see myself digging a little deeper into histories and telling the story not just of my empire, but of my greatest cities. This is an area of the game that looks really fun. This is such a good boy. Fourth, let's discuss the art. In my previous videos, I have been very critical of some of the stylistic choices that the game has made. The diplomacy screen looks ridiculous, the muted grays of the dialogue panels and menus looks awful compared to what they could have done, and some of the leaders look real but not real enough, which is kind of creepy and kind of why I'm on the side of not minding the cartoonishness of Civ 6, which I know some people hate. That being said, the world does look great, and I think it's going to feel nice to have something new to look at and play. With some caution, but overall, good boy. Fifth, new civs and leaders. I have to be careful here because I don't want to offend anybody, but I think this is the 3-card Monty that developers are playing with the Civ community. We are getting told that we will have the most civs at launch ever, with an entire slate of civilizations making their first appearance in civilization, such as the Han, Ming, Qing, Mauryan, Chola, and Mughal empires. That is 6 brand new civs. But let's be honest, this is China times 3 and India times 3 respectively. In order to drive home the history as built-in layers ideology, developers of Civilization have gotten more granular with the civilizations they have included. On one level, this is fine. However, they have done it at the expense of some of the traditions upon which the Civ series has been built. Now there are no Chinese or Indian civilizations. They are gone and replaced with their more sharply and fine-tuned and, albeit probably more historically accurate, counterparts. I can appreciate that some history buffs are going to love this. And let me be clear, I am fine with including the Han, Ming, Qing. They are more often referred to as dynasties rather than civs or empires, but whatever. But I am not in favor of including them to replace good old China that has been in Civ since OG Civ. Also, with leaders, there are a lot of people making their first appearance as leaders of civilizations. Some of these include Confucius, Machiavelli, Trung Trac, Ben Franklin, Himiko, and Harriet Tubman. These are fine as leaders, but it feels weird to include them at the expense of leaders that have always been in civilization. Although I am jazzed about the return of leaders like Charlemagne, Catherine the Great, Hatshepsut, Isabella, Napoleon, and Xerxes, who have been leaders in previous iterations of the Civ series, I'm not thrilled about these new leaders being in the game at the exclusion of other leaders. Where is Gandhi? Where is Alexander, Genghis Khan? I could name a bunch of former American presidents that have been in Civ before that I'd rather see over Ben Franklin or Harriet Tubman. There is no Shaka. There is not a single leader from Great Britain. While I am sure that all of this will change with DLCs and that we will see the return of some of our favorite civilizations and leaders, it should be the other way around. The leaders we know and love should come first. Machiavelli and Harriet Tubman should come later as DLCs. Those are the leaders that players should decide if they want to include as separate pay-to-play leaders. And no one should have to ask themselves if it's worth an extra $10 to be able to play as Alexander the Great. It should be the other way around. I'm sorry, I gotta give this a bad dog. Bad dog. This leads us right into Civ Switching. With each age change, leaders will switch civilizations. It is being marketed as the idea of civilizations evolving and is another mechanic to reinforce the idea that history is built in layers. No longer will ancient Greece transition from the Antiquity Age into modern times. Sorry to everyone living in present-day Greece, you just weren't strong enough to make the cut. Now those civilizations from the start of the game will evolve into a new historically streamlined civilization with a few caveats and exceptions to spice things up. This to me looks to be another 3-card Monty. On this point, I cannot hide my emotions. This is Husky pissing on the rug. Bad boy. I've said it before, this is fine as an option, but terrible as part of the basis of the game. Being Spain from turn 1 always felt fun. Being Babylon with rocket artillery, also fun. I haven't played the game yet, I know, but this feels like trying to fix something that was never broken. Bad. Bad boy. Civ switching does, however, allow players to do clever things in stages of the game by taking advantage of various paths, becoming a certain civilization at a certain stage, and to then take advantage of Civ-Specific Wonders. Although every civilization will have the opportunity to build every available wonder in the game, Egypt will have bonuses steering them toward building the pyramids, Rome the Colosseum, Inca, Machu Picchu, America the Statue of Liberty, even though it was a gift from the French, who get their own bonus for the Eiffel Tower, and so on. This is a tough one. I appreciate how any civilization can still build any wonder. On some level, I like the idea of getting a boost, like cutting down the build time of, say, the Oracle if your civilization has access to marble. They did this in Civ 4 and it steered some early game strategy. But I like the idea of being the Mongols in building the pyramids, or being Egypt and building Notre Dame Cathedral. Making Wonders civilization-specific is likely to cut down on this, and we are likely to see the same civs building the same wonders every game. I'm hopeful it doesn't play out like that when I actually get a chance to play. But for now, bad boy. The one thing that is no longer civ-specific, believe it or not, is your leader. First look videos remind us to consider pairing Harriet Tubman with America in the modern age, but theoretically, I guess you could be Harriet Tubman, leader of the Roman legions. This is another aspect of the civ switching, and I don't want to focus on it, but rather the evolution of leader attributes that grow the unique qualities of your leader throughout the game. It seems that they have added an RPG element to the game, where players unlock bonuses based on which civilization they play as, or how they play the game, and add certain attributes to their leader that grow with them throughout the game. This looks like it will be a very fun little twist to the game where no longer are you Alexander with the To the World's End bonus, but now you could be Benjamin Franklin and earn this bonus, along with others, over the course of the game. Lots of room for fun story-building strategy here. What sort of leader did they become over the course of the game? When faced with this pressure, how did they adapt? What bonus did they choose or receive? And how did it affect the history of the world thereafter? I'm all for it. Who's a good boy? The new influence yield has replaced diplomatic favor and now will not be spent only during sessions of the World Congress. Influence gets spent or saved during every interaction with a rival leader in a sort of rock, paper, scissors game where you can save influence, stay neutral, or get antagonistic depending on your goals. Assuming that developers get the balance correct, then this looks like an interesting way to jockey with opponents on how to either speed things up or stymie an opponent's progress. A bit like diplomacy and espionage all in one screen. I like the idea of spending my diplomatic currency at more spaced out or erratic moments in the game rather than every 30 turns or whatever it was for the World Congress. I'm giving this a very soft, good boy. Independent powers. Gone are barbarians and city-states. Instead, they have been smashed together to form independent powers. This looks like it's basically Barbarian Clans mode from Civ 6 with a few extra tweaks. I don't usually play with game modes on, but Barbarian Clans is one of the few I toggle on occasionally to spice things up. Giving it a place in the base game, I'm all for. Good boy. Resource management. Accumulating resources like iron, niter, dyes, ivory, and everything else that might exist in the game environment no longer means just fetching it with a worker and repairing the tile upon environmental disaster. Resources now have to be assigned to cities and moved around like Great Works in Civ 6 in ways that will help to best serve your empire. From what we have seen, reallocating resources could also be seen as similar to moving governors as a way to make best use of their bonuses. Instead of just trading off the excess copies of a resource, the resource city allocation screen is likely to become one of the most viewed menus of any playthrough as players look to optimize how their resources are being used within their empire. This is the mini game that replaces builders, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun, especially in the late game where in Civ 6 I find myself not always knowing what to build next and just saying to myself, I may as well build another builder. So to the new resource management mechanic, I say, good boy. Civ 7 has also introduced an overhaul to the combat system where commanders take center stage over individual units. It is now commanders who lead an array of units and that have their own promotion tree. Individual units do not promote. Their combat victories instead provide experience to the commander. There are also all sorts of new mechanics about how commanders can lead their armies over terrain and use coordinated attacks, and it looks great. This new combat system, where the focus is on the commanding unit, applies to land, naval, and aerial combat, and as we have seen in live streams, looks really cool and has been designed to cut down on some of the frustrating movement micromanagement that players have had to contend with in previous Civ games. Still untested, but it looks like a very good design and a positive step forward for combat. Good boy. One of the last major changes to the game is the division of the game into 3 distinct ages. Ages replaces the era system from Civ 6 and are clear dividing lines in the game. At first, I was very optimistic about this change, and I still do believe that at its core, it is a great idea and a very interesting mechanic. I love the idea of various phases of the game feeling more balanced, and am hopeful that the modern age is just as fun to play as the antiquity age, unlike where the Civ 6 late game often drags on, while the early game feels like it happens in the blink of an eye, and before you really get a chance to just sit and enjoy. However, after watching various live streams and seeing how these ages have been implemented, I think that the mechanic has some serious flaws. For now, I'm giving this a soft bad doggy. Even though I think that in the future, when they iron out some of the kinks, this will become a great part of the game. From what I've seen, the idea is just too half-baked. Put that pie back in the oven. Lastly, we have the crisis mechanic. For anyone who has seen my previous videos on Civ 7, I think it's pretty clear how I feel about this one. At this point, I'm even tired of trying to explain why this just feels like a weird, nothing, and annoying idea. But here it goes. Crises happen. Part of life. Undeniable. But they should happen because of how the game gets played, and not that the game gets played because they happen. It's a game mode, not the game. It sounds wrong and shoehorned in there so that they can start the game over with a new age instead of transitioning seamlessly from one to the other. Instead of you, the player, recognizing where the important events of the game took place, they condescendingly pat you on the nose and go, "Here, this is important, pay attention." I like to give Civ players more credit than that. Players should define the crises during the game and not the game dictating the crises for the players. I know, I haven't played yet, but for now, with 0 hours of playtime, I hate this. Bad boy. So, there you have it. 9 new major changes to Civ 7 that have me sleeplessly howling at the moon, and 5 that have me doing the zoomies wondering who fell asleep at quality control. That's a pretty good score overall. So if anybody wants to tell me that I'm not excited to play Civ 7, well, I'm very excited, and I hope you are too. So let me know what changes to the game have you the most excited by leaving a comment down below. Support the channel by clicking subscribe, leave us a good boy or a bad doggy, but most importantly, remember to keep playing and making your own civilization stories, your own amazing path through history, and I'll see you next time.